Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times called it a coarse-grained and exploitive work which depends on excess for its impact. Jay Hoberman of The Village Voice called it a near Hitchcockian exercise in transference of guilt and making the audience pay for its illicit pleasures. And Pauline Kael of The New Yorker said it may be the most cheerfully perverse scare movie ever made. On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of Jaws. Welcome to this edition of Ruined Childhoods. This is Dan, and I'm here with Jon. How's it going, Jon?
Hey, I'm doing swell. How are you,
Which
Dan?
one will it be?
Swell as well.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like the first group of episodes that we've done have all been about these movies that there's an element of something about them that's like kitschy or like, you know, just kind of off. And we just had the chance to revisit Jaws.
Yeah.
So
certainly not.
it was
not a what one would consider an underground cult film or something that gained popularity after its theatrical release.
Yeah, and we will surely talk about this in a bit, but like you, I know, watched at least one of the sequels, which certainly has a schlock factor to it. If we're just I only watched the first of the series, and man, it was just really nice to like see something truly incredible.
Yeah.
You know, and it had been a few years since I've seen it, so it was just nice to revisit that. But before we get into that, I wanted to give a shout out to someone who sent us an email. Yeah. This person, it goes by the name of French Fry Phil, and they say, "Great job on the last Starfighter episode." That would have been our last episode.
Oh, thanks,
It
French
makes me
Fry.
want to revisit. I remember renting it and a lot of other films from the library in the mid-'80s, and also seeing the $80 to $100 replacement cost listed on the brown VHS boxes next to the title. Can't wait for Jaws. Fun fact, I've seen or read somewhere that Jaws is Alton Brown's favorite film. Cheers, Phil. So how about that?
Thanks for writing in, Phil. Yeah.
Appreciate that. ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com if you want to write in. I hope it's okay that I just read that to everybody, Phil, but
No, and
I felt like it was completely a completely regular type of email, nothing weird about it. So
no, and I want to say,
just wanted to share.
And I got to say, shout out to the library video rental. You know, it's the underappreciated resource. Like we
always go to your
we rented
check your
tons.
local library. Yeah, for sure. Check your local library, and also, and we've talked about Hoopla,
Yes.
HOOPLA before, but there's another service called Canopy, KANOPY. It's an app that links to your library account, and you can watch a certain number of movies for free each month.
Yeah.
So
It's great. We highly recommend
saying.
taking advantage of your local public library and all of its many resources.
yeah. And Dan, I'm trying to remember, have there been any developments in the news for what do we got?
Yeah, we had a news drop that Bill and Ted 3 is set to start shooting this spring. So
That's right.
A lot of renewed excitement about that, and it feels like this time, you know, there's been rumors in the past, but it feels like this time,
Sure,
we're moving forward. So
yeah, things are actually going to happen, and to that I say, excellent.
yes, and we also have there was a new trailer for the Lion King, the live action Lion King, and I know we've touched on the Disney live action.
Yeah,
remakes.
I only saw the first one that came out that was more of like a shot by shot, you know, kind of copy. But like I'm okay with that. Like I thought that this looked actually pretty great. I haven't seen the new trailer, so I can't speak to that.
It really looks like it's going to be something really spectacular. I'm sure it'll be an IMAX 3D large format release, and I would love to at least see it on a huge screen.
I feel like that's the way to do it. That's the way I will want to do it, for sure.
Yeah.
It seems just kind of like a pretty special thing, and it's like The Lion King, when it came out, originally was just like such a huge smash.
Monumental.
And is monumental, is just so delightful. It's so very much rewatchable.
It's my favorite.
Incredible people are in it, and it's like I'm not upset that they're doing this to it.
No,
and there's great people involved, so I'm okay with it.
I feel like I'm less skeptical about the Disney live action remakes that don't involve a lot of humans. Jungle Book, which I have yet to see Jungle Book, but by all accounts was phenomenal. One human. You get like your one human.
And he's great. That the kid that they have doing, I forget the actor's name, but like he did great.
So I at some point would love to catch that, and I don't intend to miss The Lion King when it's back in theaters. I saw it twice on its first run, so and I was not a big Disney animation fan, but The Lion King, yeah, that movie's something special.
So I know that this one isn't we don't have any rules necessarily about how these need to be about movies, but have you seen the trailer or commercial for the new Twilight Zone? I guess you could say reboot.
Yeah, well,
sure.
Yeah, it's he's taken Jordan Peele is taking the concept.
He's the new Rod Serling, and I mean the trailer for it looked great.
Yeah, I mean if you look at a lot of Get Out,
sure.
A lot of Get Out was kind of stylistically or plot wise, I guess, like
sure.
Twilight, like the
also,
worst, the scariest Twilight Zone episode, but.
Yeah, right. Tonally also just very reminiscent of the Twilight Zone. And I mean, I love that there's a lot of comedic actors who are in it who it's just like you can tell that like they just love the Twilight Zone. Kumail Nanjiani, Adam Scott, plenty of people in it are just completely phenomenal actors, and I'm really excited to see how they all deal with it.
It makes me wonder if it might end up having... And I'm not worried just because creatively I put a lot of stock in Jordan Peele, but I wonder if it could end up leaning more towards that Tales from the Crypt kind of, humorous. Like there's still some scares, some shocks, but if it'll be more psychological or more, sometimes could go more farcical with it.
Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's going to be good.
If there's anything else I was looking, I saw that there's an Addams Family reboot, an animated.
Oh,
it looks like.
Oh, really?
And I could not find a trailer for it, but it's coming out later this year, and it looks like it's stop motion animation. It looks like a Henry Selick-esque film. Henry Selick of Coraline and Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right.
But
yeah, well, that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, it does. It looks like the style is it's kind of like if you're going to reboot it without Raul Julia and Angelica Houston, whose performance, all due respect to John Astin and the cast of the 60s show.
Sure.
But like Raul Julia and Angelica Houston's performances are pretty iconic in those roles.
Yeah, and that's funny because that's, when some people talk about, people who maybe grew up watching the television show in the 60s when that movie was coming out might have even been thinking like, my childhood is ruined.
Yeah.
And
The
and then
OG.
here we are talking about these two movies, both of which are amazing. People still, any Thanksgiving you're going to see images from the second one pop up, on the internet. But it's just like, that's such a beloved series, and it's not even the original, which I think is a true testament to how like these reboots don't necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad thing.
No. And something like the Addams
and they
Family.
don't erase history too.
What's that?
And they don't erase history.
No, they certainly do not erase history. So unlike the Jaws series, which I learned as I was learning. So Jaws, the original Jaws, Steven Spielberg's Jaws.
1975.
1975, really the first summer blockbuster. Really the birth, lines around the corner. And it was the movie that had everyone running to see it and caused panics at beaches. And
sure.
Yeah, it did. People were scared. Like the tagline for Jaws 2, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water.
I know, and for such an iconic tagline to be on a far inferior sequel.
The Jaws series taglines. So Jaws 2, the tagline, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. Jaws: The Revenge has an iconic tagline as well. This time it's personal.
That's right. Was that the first time that was ever really used?
Well, yes, except that as I was going back and watching Jaws 2, and I guess we should go back and explain, because this episode isn't a standout also in that Jaws is not necessarily a movie we grew up with.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first that we're talking about that predates both of us.
I mean, we're like, we didn't grow up watching. I didn't see the original Jaws until I was at least in middle school. I had already seen Jaws 2, thanks to HBO was running Jaws 2, and I'd seen Jaws: The Revenge.
I feel like we also weren't a big, like, I guess, I don't know if you'd call this a horror movie, but like, we weren't a big scary movie family.
No.
But this kind of transcends that idea. And watching it, I couldn't take my eyes off of it because it is just so well shot and edited. I mean, clearly the score, which everybody knows, is just phenomenal. It's just completely outstanding. I mean, we're telling you things you already know. I don't even know.
You know that it's iconic when people will know the theme to Jaws. People will do that dun 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 dun, and never having seen the movie, possibly never not knowing what it's actually from, but just knowing, okay, this music is associated with there's danger coming.
Well, it's also kind of like how anytime you and I are talking to our mother on the phone or call her and she says, I was just thinking about you. And so she starts going, do, 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 going back to the Twilight Zone. It's kind of like the Twilight Zone theme, has that same thing where it's like
it's got a life of its own.
It has a life of its own when something weird is happening.
Yes, exactly. It's just, yeah. So, I mean, and she, of course, has seen the Twilight Zone, our mother, but you have people who...
This is true.
Right, yeah. Just to be clear. So, but back to Jaws, and then I guess I could say our family's first real experience with Jaws was in person. In the summer of 1987.
Oh boy, summer of '87.
Summer of '87.
Yeah, we all went to California on a family vacation and went to Universal Studios.
Yes,
and went on the Jaws ride.
Well, it was just at that point it was funny. So Universal Studios at that point didn't have it wasn't like a theme park. It was still just like a back lot and they would just have the tram, and they'd have like the little attractions as part of it, but it was just like, okay, well, now you're going past the water, and what's that in the water? And
yeah, it's super cheesy.
Fabulous tour guide acting.
Well, and we know this because that's basically like our one main family home video from our childhoods was the Summer of '87 video.
Yes.
So, of course, otherwise we would certainly never remember this.
No, but that one managed to stand the test of time, and Jaws definitely was in the water and was pulling the pier behind him, and
right.
It was. So that was kind of, and that was the summer that Jaws: The Revenge was in theaters.
Right. I also do want to point out that, I mean, you said the taglines are great. The trailers for them are also really great. I don't know. I went back and I revisited the trailers for the 4 Jaws movies. It's only the 4, right?
It's only the 4. Interesting fact that I learned while watching Jaws: The Revenge is that in the Jaws universe, the Jaws timeline, and I'm going to get into that universe in a little bit, but in that world, Jaws 3 or Jaws 3D does not exist. The events of it just didn't happen, or it was a different Michael and Sean Brody working. Jaws 3D is where Michael, I think it's Michael Brody, is working at the eldest son of Chief Brody.
And that's Dennis Quaid, right?
Dennis Quaid. He's working at SeaWorld, and then Lou Gossett Jr. is the head of. This was a movie that we watched a lot in college, perhaps on the first VCR, as I referred to. And Jaws 3D is so cheesy, and it was made. It was a 3D movie. It was like I feel like 1983 was like the year of let's give 3D a shot. And there was a 3D Friday the 13th, and like any movie that was having their part 3 coming out, it was like, oh, it's gonna be Friday the 13th.
It's got to be 3D.
3D. Jaws 3D.
So wait, in the third one and the fourth one, isn't Michael Caine in both of those?
No. Michael Caine is only in the fourth one. He's as Hoagie, the shady pilot.
Got it. I thought that for some reason he was in the third one also. But what do I know?
Michael Caine's quotes about Jaws: The Revenge are amazing. One of them I remember, and I remember like hearing this long ago before the internet, but Michael Caine was asked about Jaws: The Revenge, and he said, "I've never seen the film, and by all accounts, it's a terrible film, but I have seen the house that it built, and it's a magnificent house."
Oh my God.
So he didn't even care. Michael Caine was nominated for an Oscar in 1987 for Hannah and Her Sisters. And he won the Oscar, but was not allowed to leave the set of Jaws 4 wherever it was. I think it was filming in Florida. But yeah, so he wasn't allowed to leave to get his Oscar, and I don't know that he necessarily cared because the paycheck was that nice.
So not only was Jaws 4: The Revenge this, like, I guess by all accounts, awful movie, but it also has such little respect for filmmaking that it wouldn't even let one of its stars receive their Oscar.
So, John, if I can get into the weeds a little bit here on Jaws: The Revenge.
Oh, the seaweeds, if you will?
Into the
I hate us.
If I can anchor myself in this port for a while.
Speaking of anchors, the mayor's suit in Jaws, it's got a bunch of anchors on it. That is a phenomenal suit.
The mayor in Jaws, and by the way, one of my favorite memes that always comes out around election time, the one about the mayor in Jaws is still the mayor in Jaws 2. Local elections matter.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But so I'm watching Jaws: The Revenge, and one of the most just renowned awful atrocities of Jaws: The Revenge is that the plot is built around the concept that Jaws' family, the great white sharks that we've been dealing with, this same line of sharks or perhaps the same shark. No, I don't think they say
No.
that. But like this, like the son of Jaws or daughter, or like uncle of Jaws or whoever, that there's a personal vendetta. And it's funny because in Jaws 2, one of the characters says to Chief Brody, Roy Scheider, he says sharks don't take things personally.
Oh,
And I'm like, yeah, well, two sequels later they do. And as I'm watching the movie, I'm trying to think, how does this possibly make sense, and where is there evidence of some explanation? And because I feel like I have to, I came up with an explanation.
Okay, let's hear it.
Ellen Brody, played by Lorraine Gary,
Right.
is psychically connected to the great white sharks. And I'm like Harry Potter Voldemort, kind of like how
Okay.
Harry sometimes he sees through Voldemort's eyes and Voldemort can see into his mind. And so you've got like Ellen Brody, and hey, maybe there's a prequel in this as she's like communicates with animals in the wild or something like that. And so
Well,
there's these
go on.
there's these moments where it's like she knows the shark is there. She can't see it. Like there's this one moment where she's with Michael Caine and they're in like the middle, they're in the Bahamas on this island. I don't think they ever specify the island, but they're in the Bahamas, and
Bahama Island.
Michael, they're at Bahama. They're on Kokomo.
Kokomo?
They're on Kokomo.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. So she's and she's recently, so she's lost her husband, who the exposition there is that he died of a heart attack. He had nothing at all to do with Roy Scheider like swearing off the series.
Yeah.
like during the making of Jaws 2. But long story short, she's so how many times are we going to say that? So he's died of a heart attack, which she says, she's like, it might have been, that's what the coroner's report said, it was a heart attack, but it was that shark, and she knows it was like the psychological shark in Brody's mind. And then at the beginning of Jaws: The Revenge, which clever move, they set it around the holidays. They set it around Christmas. So
Okay.
so
Did Shane Black write this one?
so Shane, the long shark, good night. A long kiss,
Apologies
great
to
white.
everybody for bringing up Shane Black right now.
Okay.
Moving on.
No,
Keep going, Dan.
So yeah, and then Sean Brody, the younger son of Chief Brody, is killed by a great white shark. She goes to the Bahamas, where Michael Brody, played by, drum roll please,
Lance Guest.
Lance Guest.
Oh, sorry.
No drum roll necessary, I guess.
Yeah.
So Lance Guest.
The last Starfighter himself.
Yep. He's grown a beard, but otherwise still has that same roguish energy. And so he and his wife and their 5-year-old child, who, by the way, whoever wrote the script and wrote the dialogue and behavior of the 5-year-old, as the parent of an almost 5-year-old, spot on.
Wow.
So that we can give. So this does not get a lot of screenwriting props often, but I got to give it to this one. But so she's in the middle of town, and there's like some festival happening, and she's with Michael Caine. And meanwhile, Michael is out on his research boat with Mario Van Peebles, who plays his friend, partner, research assistant, and they are attacked by a great white shark. They're miles away from each other. She stops, we're cutting back and forth now between the shark attacking the boat with Michael on the boat and Ellen Brody just frozen like a deer in headlights in the middle of town. Like she knows something's happening. And it happens. There's another scene when it happens. Yeah. Oh, wow. Jeez. You know?
Moving on.
So,
Go ahead.
And then there's a scene later on. It's the banana boat scene. If you've seen the movie, you
yeah.
know what if there's an iconic scene in this, The banana boat scene.
I feel like I don't know anything about this movie except this scene.
Because it's probably the most legitimately frightening scene in the movie because there's a lot of children in the water.
Yeah.
This water that is, by the way, way too shallow and I would imagine warm for a great white shark. Definitely too shallow, but logic doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she does, and it happens again. She senses it when they're on the boat and the shark's going to attack. She knows, like, before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
She's not like Brody when he calls a false alarm because there's a school of fish swimming. He actually sees something. She doesn't know. She just senses it, and she has this moment, and it's the, it's mom. Wrong pitch.
Yeah.
So I'm watching it, and I'm like, the only plausible explanation is that there's a psychic connection between them. And by the way, the climax of the movie, she comes out onto the water. And it's like, there's this scene when it's like, it's high noon and they're both coming on both ends of the street. And it's like the shark is coming, or it's more closely comparable, I would say, to like what Vader and Obi-Wan confront each other at the end of the original Star Wars. It's like they knew, they sensed each other and they were like, yeah, I know I'm coming to fight this person. And it is, like, seriously, you see the scene. It's Ellen Brody in the boat sailing towards, and you got the shark coming from the other direction. And it's like, this is the end. There can be only one. And it makes as much sense. It's the only explanation.
You're looking for plausible explanations, and I think that's our problem here.
No, that's our gift.
No, it's a bad movie with one remarkably memorable scene. That's all.
I'm just, if you ever have the opportunity to watch it again, check it out and watch it through. Watch
it
it
is
through
on
that.
Netflix, so
Go on Netflix and watch it with that lens. Think to yourself, is there a psychic connection between Ellen Brody and the shark? Especially considering, by the way, that Jaws 3 is not considered canon. Because she's not in that one. She's not at SeaWorld.
Got it.
Jaws 3 not canon. So otherwise, that shark is coming to her every time. She could be the reason for all of this.
So, okay.
She's a witch. Ellen Brody is a witch. She communicates with animals.
What?
Yeah.
Why anybody in the Brody family still after Jaws 1 goes anywhere near water is beyond me.
Yeah. It's funny. It reminds me of what Eddie Murphy's routine, going back to Delirious. He talks about horror movies and white families in horror movies and the Amityville Horror. He's like, the ghost tells them to get out of the house and they're like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's totally, I mean, well, any sequel defies logic in that respect.
Yes. I mean, the first one, completely plausible in terms of, Chief Brody getting involved because it is his job. How is he to know that this new position as the chief of police of, like, Amity is going to be such a crazy experience? No way of ever predicting that.
How does he know that sharks are cyclically connected to his wife?
Okay. All right. We've got to move on from that. So,
Sticking my guns.
So we have, aside from, so we've got the first movie, a classic. Then we have 3 sequels. And then we have video games. We can also maybe even consider counting the Back to the Future Part 2 2015 sequel to
was it Jaws 19?
That was it Jaws 19? I think so, yeah.
But isn't it funny though?
Here we go.
This is not going to be I'm not going too far into the weeds here. I'm just saying, isn't it funny how in the 1970s, in the mid-70s, you have two movies come out. They're classics. One of them is a Best Picture nominee, Jaws, I believe. And the other is a Best Picture winner, Rocky. And both of those go on to become franchises that are kind of critically ridiculed. And were even Airplane, I think it's Airplane 2 that has the poster about like Rocky, like they have like then a ridiculous number of Roman numerals. And then there's,
and they're still making them.
They've
the Creed movies.
They've spun off. So
yes. Yeah. Loosely. Yeah. Although I did recently watch Rockies 3 and 4 and then Creed on a flight recently.
That's a nice flight. I watched Rocky 4 on a flight once. It was perfect. And Creed is a great movie.
Why are we watching Rocky 4 on flights? It's 2019, Dan. What's wrong with us?
Because I don't know. What else are you going to do?
Yeah, there you go.
You watch
Perfect.
Rocky 4, I don't know, you sleep. So
it was available on like the Alaska Airlines like free movies thing. So anyway, here we are.
So getting back to Jaws, I'll say this for the sequels before we get into what we're here to do. I will say this for Jaws 2. Jaws 2 does deliver. I mean, it cribs a lot of the scares from the first one, but it does it well. Spielberg didn't come back to direct it. He was doing Close Encounters, and I also don't think the idea appealed to him. There was a proposal of doing a sequel that would actually be like Jaws 2 was going to be a prequel about Quint on the USS Indianapolis.
Oh, that's kind of cheap.
Well, it's you can tell that story without it being connected to Jaws. You can actually you can just make that movie. But they were going to do that, and so Jaws 2 is fun, and they've got like that one. Michael is a teenager, so it's all that like teenage recklessness, and you know, so what? A shark comes back a second time to Amity Island, and still no one believes Brody until there's a high enough body count. So Jaws 2 is great. Jaws 3 is campy, fun. It's a great, late night movie. It's just don't expect to really be scared and don't expect quality. And same thing with Jaws: The Revenge. I enjoyed watching Jaws: The Revenge more than I expected to.
Oh, I'm sure, because it's campy. But like one thing that you got to think about is the first Jaws is a movie about tapping into your fears. And it's a movie about just, I mean, it's also so much about the people. You don't see a shark for the first hour of the movie. And even after you do, you still have these great scenes like the USS Indianapolis scene where it's just like so much about human connection. And that's what, to me, that movie was so much more about. And then the other ones are about fighting sharks.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. It's they just went off on their own path and became their own little their own little trilogy of like,
just,
I don't know,
shark movies,
which these days we have hundreds of shark movies. I mean, there's like the Sharknado movies. There's
the Meg,
the Meg. That's right. There's also the one that Tommy Wiseau just released a trailer for called like Big Shark or something like that.
Oh, this is news to me. I got to check this out.
Oh, you got to check out the trailer. It's crazy.
A Tommy
Wiseau
pants. Shark movie.
Yeah, with Greg Sestero, of course.
Why not?
And the
DiCaprio to his Scorsese. By the way, so I meant to mention this in the beginning when we were talking about news, but even just that teaser for that new Scorsese flick on Netflix, The Irishman, it's just like Al Pacino and Robert De Niro exchanging a couple of brief lines of dialogue, but just it's like it's like Avengers for like serious actors of of the latter 20th century. Joe Pesci is back. So
Joe Pesci's back. Yeah, I saw that.
So
that's pretty cool.
Anyway, just had to get that out. I want to talk about
I
want to talk about Jaws, and I want to talk about the untold stories.
Right. So what would you do, gun to your head, forced to make something else in the Jaws-averse? Tell me what you would do.
Brody.
Okay.
So when Jaws opens, the Brodies have recently moved to Amity Island from New York City, where Martin Brody was a cop and he had some kind of burnout. It's kind of vague, but you kind of get some ideas throughout Jaws, and I guess Jaws 2. He likes the drink. He also can be pretty reckless with his gun. In Jaws 2, he like almost there's a shot where he like almost shoots at a kid. He's like aiming just past the kid. And I've always wondered, what if you had, and I think there's so many ways you could do this. I actually would think a series of novels about Brody's experiences as a cop in New York, his, maybe his early relationship with Ellen, and eventually what it is that burns him out and sends him to Amity for some peace and quiet. So, and he's got this water fear too, and that could certainly play into it. But I would say I'm really interested to know, what's the story? What kind of a cop was he in New York? Why did he leave? So that's the idea I've had for a while. I want to say, like, I watch Jaws once a year. I watch it around July 4th every year, if I could squeeze it in. And
yeah,
I remember thinking about this and just hearing them talking about his experience as a cop in New York. I was like, man, if you were going to do anything with this, that's the way to go. And it could be, you could do it as a series. You could do it as like a Netflix or HBO or Hulu series. You could do a prequel film.
Mm-hmm. So then the next question is, who would you cast as Brody?
My first, my gut instinct, the gun to the head answer was Sam Rockwell.
Oh.
And I think it's he's kind of a go-to because I feel like he can do pretty much anything.
Yeah, I mean, granted, he doesn't look what his age probably is, but he's probably at the same age as Roy Scheider was when he was doing Jaws.
That was something I thought of. He's probably a little too old.
He can play younger, though. I don't know.
I mean, you need someone like, and here's the thing: you have to resist the urge to like cast some guy who's like really big, because Roy Scheider wasn't big, tough guy. You're not going to cast like John Bernthal as young Martin Brody, but so I guess I was thinking Sam Rockwell, and there's probably a lot of other options that I have not considered.
Sure.
I think Chris Pine kind of popped into my head, but I feel like...
See, it's funny because I was just thinking Chris Evans, because I feel like he has a similar look to Roy Scheider a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know.
Chris Evans, okay. He'll need something to do.
I think he'll be okay.
He'll need something to keep him busy. Yeah, no, he's got a future ahead of him. So yeah, I'm curious. The only other idea I had for a prequel was Matt Hooper, The College Years. I'm just thinking, like just Animal House, and I don't know who you cast as a young Richard Dreyfuss. So I did make
considering he was pretty young at the time anyway. Sorry, go ahead.
No, So I was thinking I'd made another connection, and it occurred to me. So what if there's a cinematic universe in the films of Steven Spielberg, and what if in that universe Martin Brody is related to Marcus Brody of Indiana Jones?
Interesting.
That maybe that Martin Brody, and there doesn't need to be much more of a connection, but
it would be what, like his uncle?
Yeah, I guess that would make sense.
Something like that.
His uncle.
Yeah.
I think that would make sense.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But was Brody the name of the character in the book Jaws? I never read it, so I don't know.
Neither do I. But I'm gonna look that up. I'm curious.
So while you're doing that, Dan, I'm going to tell you a thought that I had for a potential. This would be a reboot idea. So, yes, Chief Brody he has come to Amity Island from New York, where he was a cop, and lo and behold, the first thing that happens when he gets there is there's this massive shark that's killing everyone. Sounds like something that could happen to, I don't know, John McClane. Die Hard 6, Jaws the reboot. The New York cop who's just always in the wrong place at the wrong time.
At the end, does he end up with like, yippee-ki-yay, you son of a bitch?
Yes, maybe.
That's what Brody says when he smile, right, you son of a bitch.
Just throwing that out there. It's not my serious idea, but just imagine. Because as soon as it was he came there from New York, I'm just like, New York cop, all of a sudden is in this real weird situation. Sounds like someone I know.
Come up to the island. We'll have a good time.
Yeah. The other thought that I had is the thing is, like, Jaws is such a special movie.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say like it's perfect and shouldn't be touched, because who's to say that? But like, I feel like there are ways to honor it that won't impact the legacy of this movie in any way, but will also just kind of show a lot of respect for it. Because when in a lot of the, I guess, reboots lately that you've seen, I don't know, like Judge Dredd or RoboCop, stuff like that, where it's just like, they're not doing it for RoboCop fans, or
right.
Well, maybe Judge Dredd because I was a comic guy. I don't know, but I don't know. I feel like in a way that there needs to be some form of movie that just kind of pays respect to it, and I feel like the only way to do it is to not take it super seriously, but to do it in a way that's like, and I know that this is going to make you think of the shot-for-shot Psycho remake, but what if there was like an actual shot-by-shot remake of Jaws, but starring people from like other genres, and like do it with people from the comedy world, like have
Adam Scott as Brody.
Sure, Adam Scott as Brody, Quint as Jason Mantzoukas, maybe even Seth Rogen as Hooper. Like, have people from different universes kind of enter in the Jaws world. But like, what's up?
You're making me wonder if they've ever done so. I don't know if this still happens, but I remember a few years ago, I think it was Jason Reitman organizing readings of
screenplays. He still does that, I think.
Okay, I'm curious to know if they've done Jaws and who read the parts, because it seems
that's a really interesting question.
I remember they did Princess Bride, and I was never in LA when that was going on, but always sounded really cool. So
yeah, I never went to any of those.
So by the way, to come back, the character in the book is Brody, Martin Brody is the character in the book. It also looks like, and I never read the book, but we've got a lot of background on Ellen here. apparently, oh wait, apparently Ellen was had a relationship with Matt Hooper.
What?
What
In
is
the
this?
book?
There's a whole thing between her and apparently she used to be rich, and there's a whole lot more. There's a whole lot of
This is all in the book?
tension. Yeah, or it's on the Wikipedia page on the book. So I'm curious now. I'm interested to read the book. I always felt like, I've got the movie that's definitive, but
Well, it's not like the book is the novelization. It's,
no,
an adaptation. So,
but I've always,
Yeah.
but I remember hearing, I think even Peter Benchley, I don't know that he preferred the movie to the book, but I know
he's the author, right?
Yeah, Peter Benchley wrote that.
And didn't he also write the screenplay? Or was he somehow, maybe it was just a credit, a credit type of situation?
He didn't write the screenplay. The screenplay was written by, I want to say, one of the guys.
I thought I saw his name come up in the credits, though.
Carl
as
Gottlieb.
One of the writers. Okay.
So Carl Gottlieb wrote the adapted it, and he's in the movie. I forget who he plays. He has a supporting role. Huh. But
I also want to point something out about Jaws real quick. The crew, and I noticed this while watching the end credits, there's a lot of women who worked on this movie. And I feel like 1975, you probably don't get a lot of females, female crew members, people running the show. I don't know. I just thought that was pretty interesting for the time. I mean, it was edited by Verna Fields, who's, done a lot of just absolutely amazing movies. But I don't know, that because I was watching it and I was like, man, the editing in this is just absolutely phenomenal. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right, it's Verna Fields.
Well, and the editing is so essential. And I think by now most people know the backstory about the production of Jaws and how they had so much trouble with the shark, which is why it's not in as much of the movie and why the movie focuses more on the characters, because they couldn't use the shark half the time, and it was such a blessing in disguise. But the fact, so the flexibility of the filmmakers to be able to take that problem and turn it into a bonus for the movie and turn it into something. And I'm sure at the time they didn't know and it'll be even better. But to be able to just move the boldness of of going forward, and then the talent of the crew, and especially Verna Fields, especially the editing and John Williams with the music. The editing and the music create that tension that a mechanical shark, no matter how well it worked, couldn't have created.
Right. Oh yeah. And also just to give a lot of credit to the to Bill Butler, who was the cinematographer. Such just a gorgeous movie.
Oh yeah.
And he was also in the camera crew for the Oscar winner of that year, Cuckoo's Nest. So that was a successful year for Bill Butler. Made a lot of smart choices there.
All right, Bill Butler, 1975.
Way to go, bud.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. To talk about rebooting or remaking, I do agree that a Brody prequel would be interesting. I mean, there would be zero sharks, which is a pretty interesting aspect of it. What's up?
What's kind of crazy is when I kind of think about the style, because I'm like, all right, it's going to be set, it would be set I guess late 60s, maybe very early 70s. And I was thinking French Connection, which Roy Scheider co-stars in.
Sure.
With Gene Hackman as a New York City cop.
That's right. Oh, interesting. I mean, I also suppose that one of Brody's assignments as a New York cop could also be fighting sharks, and by that I mean the gang from West Side Story.
In Steven Spielberg's remake of West Side Story. This is a real thing, by the way.
This is happening?
No, I'm not kidding. Yeah, Steven Spielberg is remaking West Side Story.
Oh my God.
Readapting, I guess, West Side Story. So,
all right.
Readapting it for the screen.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know much about. I know Cheetah Rivera who was in the original film of it, is going to be in this some way, shape, or form. I don't know much more about the casting. I don't know how I necessarily feel about it. Yeah.
Oh, I just thought of one other thing that came up this past week in remake and reboot news. And by the way, we are recording this the day after, or the day that the prior episode came out. So
yes.
Our weeks might be a little, like, stuff may happen before this episode comes out.
That email came in today that we read before.
It came in today. So one thing is, because of course we're going to talk about Ghostbusters almost every episode, there was a quote from Jason Reitman saying that his new Ghostbusters movie is going to be for the fans. And a lot of people, or it's like giving it back to the fans. And this was taken really, in a very harsh way from like people that were involved with the Paul Feig Ghostbusters movie. And he has then gone back and been like, oh my God, that is not at all what I meant, and was very complimentary to Paul Feig and the Ghostbusters movie that came out a couple years ago. That's just bringing it up since it was, I saw it in the news, but I get a newspaper that's one page, and it's just reboot news. And this is the front page, believe it or not, and the back page.
It's just a double-sided.
So,
yeah.
It's just the same thing on both sides.
Yeah. I guess
so
also,
anyway, that's just another thing.
And to I guess I don't know that I have much. The only thing I have to add to Jaws is you were talking about, something to pay homage to it, some type of reboot. And I was like, maybe, like, what about a series called Amity? What about setting a show in Amity, and maybe it's the Amity of the original vision for Jaws 2, by the way, was where you come to Amity, and Amity's all boarded up and shut down, and it's like a ghost town. That was part of the original concept of Jaws 2. But imagine you have an Amity that you could set the series in the early 80s, and you have an Amity that's reeling from shark attacks, and you have a town that thrives on tourism that doesn't, that's not attracting tourists anymore. So what does this town do to turn things around? And I don't know, maybe you've got some crooked politicians, you've got some, I don't know, so not to rip off Ozark, but like some money laundering, or maybe there's, you could make, I feel like you could take that setting, and of course with the blessing of the creators of Jaws, create a series, create characters, definitely have a connection somewhat, but it's not about sharks. It's about what does a community do to recover after disaster hits?
A major, huge town-wide tragedy.
Yeah.
Island-wide tragedy.
Yeah. People died. So that's
very much so.
That's
graphically.
So that's I think that's all I have on Jaws.
Yeah, I mean, I had some other like casting ideas if there were to be a remake.
Oh.
Well, just like people who I would like to see in, the only one that I really thought would be interesting is if, and it would add a very different element to it, especially if you're setting it in the same time period. But if Chief Brody were like Oscar winner Mahershala Ali, you know, something like that, where it's like kind of giving it a little twist that, I don't know, could kind of change the conversation a little bit. What's up?
I'll throw a suggestion in there.
Sure.
As Quint, Gary Oldman.
Ooh, yeah. I like that.
Or I would do Gary Oldman, possibly Brendan Gleeson.
Huh. I don't know if I see Brendan Gleeson
Maybe
so much,
not-
but it's hard to get.
Not anymore.
It's hard to think of him without thinking of him as like Mad Eye Moody.
Good point. But yet you can think of
Well,
Gary
and then you can
Oldman.
get Domhnall Gleeson as Brody.
Domhnall Gleeson is right. Okay, there we go. Great.
We can get him back together with Oscar Isaac. Although I imagine Oscar Isaac more as a Brody and Domhnall Gleeson more as a Hooper.
You just brought it full circle
Anyway.
because you reminded me of who is voicing Gomez Addams in the animated Addams Family, Oscar Isaac, who I actually think
is it really?
If they were doing a live action one and they cast Oscar Isaac, I'd be down with that. Oscar Isaac,
I'd be down with that too.
I just thought like Hank Azaria would be a fun Gomez Addams.
Yeah, I think he's a little aged out of it.
Well, yeah, no, and not now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Prior.
Yeah. So looking at our list of potential properties to talk about, I mean, Addams Family is on the list. Do we just want to go Addams Family for the next one?
Should we? I guess we already started talking about Addams Family, so
Well, let's continue talking about it on the next episode.
let's just roll into it. Yeah, Addams Family. So we'll chat a little bit about the TV series, which we acknowledged kind of the original adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, we could definitely talk Addams Family next week. All right. Or next episode.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have much to say about Jaws or any way to revisit it. It's just so good.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could do anything at all, it would be to take the word Jaws out of the titles for Jaws 2, 3, and 4 and just have them be their own separate
So the
shark movies.
The second one is called 2, the third one is called 3D, and the fourth one is just called The Revenge.
The Revenge.
Or For
Yeah,
the Revenge.
Sure.
I had a thought and it was like gone
Disappeared.
in a moment, but about oh wow.
Okay.
It's one of those things I'm going to remember it.
We're gonna take 2, 3, and 4. We're gonna separate them from Jaws. We're gonna strip the name Jaws. Is this bringing anything
What
back
were we
for
saying
you?
before that? Right before that.
Right before that, we were talking about the Addams Family. There's nothing more to say about Jaws. Apparently not. Maybe that's true. Hard to say.
I have
Anyway,
no idea.
if you have thoughts about Jaws and the Jaws franchise, write to us at ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com. And also, by the way, quick shout out to the Nintendo Jaws game, which was a lot of fun.
I have a vague
Just saying.
recollection of that.
Yeah, it's a hard game.
Yeah, I might have played it once.
good.
Yeah, but all right. Shout out to Nintendo.
Shout out to Nintendo.
Okay.
Here's a little bump for you guys.
And hey, shout out to you guys for joining us. Please tell your friends, spread the wealth. And if you happen to visit us,
Yeah.
whether it's iTunes, Google, Switcher, wherever you listen
Stitcher. Come on, Dan.
Stitcher,
You're not 100 years old.
Stitcher. Yeah, no.
Yeah, subscribe, rate and review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. I don't think that any of the other ones have rating or reviewing systems, but if
Write
you
to them
have a chance to do it.
and ask for a
Sure,
rating
suggest
system because of this podcast. Thank you.
And yeah, next time, Addams Family.
All right. Da-na-na-na.
We are here on the beach where a giant shark has just eaten a girl swimmer. Well, Mr. Jaws, how was it?
Dynamite!
And what did she say when you grabbed her?
Please, mister, please.
I know sharks are stupid, but what did you think when you took that first bite?
How sweet it is.
Mr. Jaws, before you swim out to sea, have you anything else to say?
Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends?
With me now is the local sheriff. Sheriff Brody, the shark will be back for lunch. What do you intend to do?
Do a little dance, make a little love, get down tonight.
Just arriving is oceanographer Matt Hooper. Sir, if someone is attacked by a shark, what should they do?
Do the hustle.
We're going aboard the fishing boat of Captain Quint. Captain, will you be able to catch this giant shark?
I will.
Thank you, Captain. Captain, when you catch one of these sharks, what do you feel like?
Like a rhinestone cowboy.
We've just sighted the shark again. He's coming straight for us. Captain Quint is shouting something at him.
Get your baby one of these nights.
Hey, Jaws, the captain says he's going to catch you. What do you think of that? Uh-oh, here he comes again. They've hit him. Mr. Jaws, why doesn't anything seem to hurt you?
Big boys don't cry. Big boys don't cry.
He's coming right onto the boat. Mr. Jaws, why are you grabbing my hand?
Wouldn't you give your hand to a friend?
No, wait, Mr. Jaws, that's not the way this record is supposed to end. Help! Help!